Hi, I'm Brandon Poe, founder of Poe Group Advisors and creator of the Accounting Practice Academy. You are listening to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast, where we talk about stuff in the accounting world. If you're looking to buy or sell a practice, we are the premier accounting practice intermediary firm in the industry. Check us out at PoeGroupAdvisors.com. If you're a firm owner looking to build a more profitable practice while actually reducing owner hours, sign up for our practice management workshop, which only runs a few times per year. Learn more at accountingpracticeacademy.com. All right, welcome to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast. I'm excited about our guest and our topic today. This is a topic we haven't fully gone into, and so I can't wait to have a discussion today with Marcey Rader, who believes that health powers productivity. She's a multi-certified health and productivity expert, one of 800 certified speaking professionals worldwide, a certified virtual presenter, digital wellness practitioner, three-time author and creator of the Powered Path Playbook. And she is the founder of RaderCo. Marcey helps executives, teams, and individuals banish burnout, keep good people, move forward through practical, tailored tools, healthy and sustainable habits, and coaching accountability. Sought after by startups to Fortune 100 companies, she's spoken for tens of thousands of people on 5 continents. As an award-winning global speaker, she trains her audiences to improve their focus, maximize their energy, conquer the calendar, master tasks, and this is the one I really like, Marcey, extinguish their email. I want to really get into that a little bit today if we can. So to change your career, team, or organization one habit at a time, learn more, connect with Marcey at marceyrader.com. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm not surprised that you want to dive into the email piece with accountants and CPA firms. That's my number one request, is the email extinguisher presentation, and the one I've given the most CPEs on as well. Nice.
Yeah, we actually met you at the North Carolina Symposium in November of last year, and I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. Bailey told me a little bit about the conversation you guys had, and you really help a lot of people with remote teams as well, which is, we're seeing more and more of that in the accounting industry, obviously. So,
yeah, absolutely. I've actually worked remotely myself since 2001 or 2. So long time, pre-pandemic, and I've been training individuals and teams for about 14 years on how to work well remotely or manage well remotely. And I'll tell you, it was not the most popular topic for accounting firms before COVID. And so many times I would hear, we're accountants, we can't be virtual, we can't work remote. And I'd say, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And, you sure found that out during the pandemic. And, it was a little bit of a panic for some firms, for sure. And, the fact that it happened when it happened, in March, which is, not all accountants are tax accountants, but many of you are, and that's a very, high pressure time of year to make that transition at the, drop of a hat. That piece in my bio about banishing burnout and overwhelm. I work with many more types of businesses than accounting firms, but boy, have you guys just really had, you had 2 years of just high intensity, high stress things coming at you, with not only with just the quick to remote, but PPP loans and everything, and businesses shutting down or needing help. And I really feel for you, and it became like my mission to help CPAs make that transition better.
Yeah, and now too, I think coming out of the pandemic, you're seeing staffing issues becoming more and more acute. I know just recently there have been 2 articles in the Wall Street Journal pertaining to the accounting industry's staffing shortages. So I think it's becoming really acute. And one thing that we've been coaching CPAs on is embrace the remote team. If you can't find someone locally, get someone remotely and learn how to manage remotely. So I'm excited to get into that with you. What I'd like to start with, let me just zoom out just a little bit. How did you get into what you're doing today? How did you gravitate toward this type of consulting or coaching?
Yeah, it's not something that you grow up thinking that you're going to do. And there's certainly not a major for it in college. I actually spent 14 years in the clinical research, pharmaceutical and biotech industry as a research monitor and then a manager, worked my way up, became a trainer, and then became a training manager. And I used to travel up to 48 weeks a year. Yeah. And when I'd climbed up that ladder as high as I wanted to go, I decided to start my own business, helping people do the things that I was already helping people do on the side. So when I was doing those 48 weeks a year of travel, I was also competing in Ironman triathlons. I'd have a date with my husband every week, and I would shut down at night with inbox zero. And people would say, how do you do this? And I realized one day, I might be able to make a business out of this. The thing that, ignorance is bliss. And I didn't know anything about running a business, but I am, if you're familiar with Strengths Finders, I'm #1 learner. And so I just dove into, I love to read too. I read about 50 books a year. And so I, started reading business books and marketing books and taking courses and hiring coaches. And what I realized was that I love the business aspect of it. I love it. And so the business has changed throughout the years. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. And it started out just me, then me and a VA. And now we are a team of 10 specialists of different areas of subject matter expertise. I have a full-time client concierge director of marketing. We have a website specialist. We have a researcher and content creator. And our business model is speaking at places like NCA CPA, consulting and training at companies. We have just have a year contract with a local company in North Carolina, CPA firm, and then also coaching as well. And then I have product and books, but it's just really grown, and I absolutely love what I do.
Awesome. Well, I know, we coach CPAs as well, and you get so much from seeing them get results. That's the driver. I think it's seeing those results. And I think so many different coaches can help in so many different ways. So it's interesting to talk with someone else who's doing things, and I'm sure you're doing things differently than we are. And, but yeah, that's interesting. How much of your business is CPA focused? Do you have a variety of different clients, I would imagine?
Yes. From a marketing perspective, when people say, what's your client avatar? What's your ideal client? And I wish that I had one. But really it's like, if people have problems with email and time and technology and, then they're our client. So that's most of everyone. But my two main verticals are the biotech pharma industry, because that's where I came from, and the accounting industry. And I really just fell into that. I can't even remember why or how. I had a few CPA clients, and then somehow I was introduced to NCA CPA, spoke for them, and ended up winning their annual award for best new speaker, and then started speaking for AICPA and different state associations, started doing CPEs through CPA Academy and my CPE, and it's just morphed. I mean, of my list, my community list, most of them are CPAs.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what is the most popular CPE topic? Is it the email?
Oh, yes. Email extinguisher for sure. And, I want to step back for a second and say, because I have such an amazing CPA, I just love him to pieces. He's been managing my business for 8 years. I think too, that's what really drew me to the profession, to want to help CPAs and work with them. He was one of my his firm was one of my first clients. He's been doing this a really long time. Joel Levy, shout out to him in Chapel Hill. And I just have so much respect and admiration for him. And he's, he took me on when I was like just making nothing. I remember the first time I got a refund, and I really needed it because it was my second year in business, and I started crying and thanking him. And he said, "I'm just doing my job, Marcey." And I'm like, but it's the way you do your job. And that I really felt cared for. And so, I hadn't thought about it until just now, but I really think that because I have such a relationship with him, it really made me seek out more CPAs and accountants.
Yeah. And I think CPAs and accountants, they need help with this sort of thing. I think there's a lot of pressure, and like you mentioned in your opening, and there's a lot of value that they can create for clients like you. And the better they are at this stuff, the better they can help their clients, right?
Yes.
So, well, we talked a little bit about email. Are you seeing other trends in the accounting industry that you want to touch on today?
Definitely the remote work is a trend that isn't going anywhere, although we have people going back hybrid now. But that would be one of them. And I'd love to dive into that. I also see firms, thankfully, moving out of managing from their inbox and using a practice management system to organize their their team and their clients. And one thing COVID did too was it forced people to stop using so much paper and being reliant on that aspect of their world. If they've been doing it a long time, they were maybe hesitant to transfer to a new system or things. But then when everybody's remote, you realize, that doesn't fly. And also as a client, I want to use the technology. It's so much faster. I don't have to drive, to see you and things. If it takes 3 hours out of my day because of the commute. And so I think more and more are looking at practice management systems or CRM or the technology that is specific to accounting. Yeah.
In terms of remote work, what are you seeing as sort of the biggest challenges with implementing or managing remotely?
With managing remotely, and this is not just for accounting, it's for everyone, we tend to over communicate when our teams are remote. So managers will often over communicate for a couple of reasons. One, if they're not trusting, which to me, if you do not trust your remote employee, then they just shouldn't be your employee. It shouldn't matter if they're in your face or not. If you can't trust them to do their job, then they really just shouldn't be working for you. So that's one thing that, when I'm doing the Manage Well Remotely course, is that you have to have trust. The other thing with the over communicating is sometimes we feel like, we want to make sure that they feel like they're part of a team or that they feel included, especially in a hybrid environment where some people are in the office and some people are remote. But what many don't realize is that when you're in an office, you expect to be interrupted. You expect when somebody walks by that they may say, like, how was the game last night? Or, what are you doing for lunch? But when you are remote, when you are interrupted by every, ring, ping, buzz, or notification, that actually feels more disruptive. And so we need to dial back the communication And, that was one thing that companies that were already remote, they didn't have that learning curve during the pandemic. And people got into so many bad habits where they were texting, emailing, slacking, Teams messaging all the time. And now we need to dial it back. And because there was no communication, decision matrix in place or any kind of tech guardrails.
So what we've implemented, and tell me if this is, and we've had a hybrid team since 2007, I think. So we've been hybrid for a very, very long time.
That's great. Yeah.
What we've done is we've created like a meeting rhythm. So we meet for 30 minutes on Mondays at 11, kind of talk about crucial results for that week that everybody wants to accomplish. And then we have a scheduled individual, it's a smaller team meeting on Wednesdays that lasts about an hour to really go deep into all of our client work that's going on. And then we have a Friday kind of fun huddle sort of thing. And then we have tools like we use a project management application that has a daily summary of all the communication with clients. And so I feel like maybe we've got a pretty good rhythm, but tell me if that.
Yes, it sounds like it. And I'm glad that you use a project management system, because that will eliminate or decrease so much back and forth. At RaderCo, we don't email each other ever. Everything is in our project management system. I never have to say, is this done? I can just go and look. Actually, I'm notified when it's done. There's a history there. I'm not having to search for stuff all the time. Everything has a due date. And so it eliminates so much of that noise that is unnecessary.
Yeah. So what you're talking about, like over communication, looks like the constant pings and random emails, random text messages that it's like the manager wants to feel like they're sitting beside the person or something.
Or they want them to feel like, I see you, I care about you, I want you to feel included. And not everybody needs or wants that constant communication.
So all right, so let me ask you this. Let's say you're a manager or an owner and you're feeling like maybe the person isn't doing what they should do. How do you determine that? First of all, what do you look at? And then how do you correct it? Or maybe it doesn't need to be corrected. Maybe it needs to be eliminated.
Right. Well, to me, you would do the same thing you would do if they were in person. Somebody could be watching YouTube at work just as easily as they could be watching it at home. And if somebody is struggling, there are definitely people that are not good as remote workers because they don't have the discipline to stay on task or focused. There are also people that aren't good working remotely because they don't have the discipline to shut it off. And they'll work well into the evening. They'll start checking their emails from their bed. And actually the remote workers on average will work up to 2 more hours a day. Because what they did was they looked at people with the drive-by, people in the office, they take longer lunches because it's a lot of times they're with people or they go out for lunch. Whereas a remote worker, a lot of times will just eat lunch at their desk, or they won't go out for lunch. And it's not like they're going to a cafeteria. When they go to the bathroom, there isn't 3 people that stops them along the way. They're doing Zoom meetings, so there isn't a lot of time in between, which that's a different issue. But, the volume of work overall is actually more that's being done with remote workers. So when you can't let one bad apple spoil the bunch, right? Just because one person doesn't work well remotely doesn't mean that you can't have a good team. But finding out, is it because you don't understand, because you don't know? Do you need help setting, tech guardrails? Do you need to have some kind of mentoring that, once a week you do come into the office and, we kind of, do stuff side by side? There's also something called body doubling. And body doubling is when somebody in the vicinity of you is also working on a task. And it feels better just knowing that somebody there is working as well or working with you. And even more so if you say, Brandon, I'm going to work on playbook fulfillment for the next 45 minutes. Okay, Marcey, I'm going to work on my opt-in forms or the RaderCo tax return for the next 45 minutes. And then you start working. And that's called body doubling. And that's why co-working spaces are very popular. You don't even have to talk to people, just being in the vicinity of other people working. It's why when you clean your house or you do yard work, it feels better and more fun and faster when your partner or spouse is doing it with you. But we actually have a program called Focus 90, and it's 90 minutes long once a week. And we just get on Zoom. Anybody can join. It's a community program. More than half are accountants and bookkeepers that join. But we get on, I give a productivity tip, and then we write in the chat what we're going to do for the next 80 minutes. And then we just start working. Our cameras are on, but we're muted. Nobody talks, and we're just very focused. And then at the end, I give the productivity tip again. We write in the chat what we completed, and then we just go on with our day. And people have, I've had this program for years, but they have a sense of community. We have gotten to know each other. Like I said, so many people are accountants that, it's fun to see like what they put in the chat to each other and things. And it's just, it kind of flies in the face of that over communication, where I've heard some companies say, I want you on Zoom all day long. So I can, yeah, I see your face right there. Yes. Believe it or not, there are companies that say, we want you on Zoom all day long so that we know that you're working. There are programs that companies can install on computers to see how often the mouse is being moved. And I was just asked about that last week. And I said, it's a terrible idea. Because for one thing, some people are paper people, and they may be writing and strategizing, planning stuff out on paper. And it looks like I haven't moved my mouse, so I'm not working. It could also be that I'm watching a webinar. I know I don't need to move my mouse. I could be reading a research article, and I'm barely moving my mouse as I scroll down. So it's not a good indicator of whether or not someone's working. I am very much an outcomes-based person. It is not about the hours you put in. It is about the outcome that you achieve. And that's really how it should be.
Yeah, I agree. It should be measured that way. And I think, if you can even link compensation to those results, then you've really got a winning formula. That's what we've been able to do. It's results based, and people are paid that way. So
yeah,
I agree. And those mice. So I heard a hack is people can get those rotating fans. Just attach the mouse to the rotating fan, and it'll keep moving.
Yeah. But so, I just, if you are a company out there that uses that software, RaderCo is not the company for you to work with, because we are very much against that. Very much. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, what do you see, from an opportunity perspective, what do you see as this doing for business people in general?
I think, one of the things that's come up several times in the last few weeks when I've talked to different accountants and accounting firms, and I was actually asked this question as somebody who works with the industry but not in the industry, is, how can we attract more people to the industry? How, we have a shortage, like you said, shortage of accountants. And I think that the more open you are to remote work, the better off your company will be. When I was speaking at AICPA, their big national conference last year, I did it on Manage Well Remotely. And there was a guy in the back of the room and he raised his hand. He's like, I want people to be hybrid. They need to come in 3 days a week. They need to spend their first 90 days, in the office before they do that. And I just can't find anybody willing to do that. And this guy in the front said, send him to me. We'll take him. And I said, right there, that's your differentiator, is the flexibility now. And
Right.
so, having that flexibility, because unless you can get it, it's kind of like when you were little and your parents said, because I said so. It's like, no, I need some kind of reason, unless you can give some kind of reason, it's just hard when there are other firms that are going to say, come on in, we're open to that. The other thing that is important to think about, which I think is a great opportunity for firms, is that, if you're a firm in an expensive city, if you're in Atlanta or Chicago or New York or Boston or DC, you can hire somebody from Indiana, where I grew up, that lives in farm country, or in Nebraska or Ohio, and where they're not demanding as high of a salary. They it's a win-win for both of them, because where I grew up was very rural, so you couldn't stay there. If you wanted to be an accountant, unless you wanted just to work with the farmers around there, you really couldn't stay there if you had bigger aspirations. So it's great for both of those parties for that. Another opportunity, I think, is that I see missing, and this has nothing to do with productivity, but when you are in high school, a lot of times the only accounting that you ever hear about is when your parents go to get their taxes done. And a lot of times it's either like, yay, we got a refund, or bad news, we owe a lot of money. So it's not always even a positive experience. And so I think the marketing in a different way can also be beneficial, but it needs to actually start with high school, because there aren't enough people going into the accounting industry. And for people to understand that accounting can be done at any time of the day.
Yeah.
It's not a 9 to 5 job. If you're a night person, then,
Yeah. I just thought of something when you were talking about high school, and this is a little bit of a sidebar, but I think it's an interesting one. So I'm a CPA, and I decided to become a CPA while I was in high school. And the reason was I wanted to learn about business. And so I met with this, it was just a chance meeting. I was at breakfast with my mom, and she was talking to this gentleman who had several companies and was sort of asking for some career advice. And he said, well, go be a CPA. So if you want to learn about business, go and become a CPA. You'll get to see how all these different businesses operate. And it made me think, you know what? If CPAs could master some of the things that we're talking about today, and do a better job at getting in front of their business owner clients, and really becoming more advisors, guess what? That's going to spread out into the world. And anyway, just a thought, just a side.
No, that was a really good piece of advice, because as an accountant, you're right. You're seeing the back end of so many different types of businesses. And if you have natural curiosity to learn about that business, like Joel, my CPA, did by hiring me to come into his office, and then he really understood, what I was trying to do and things. I like that. That's a good piece.
And another thing I thought about when you were talking is, not only does it give the employees an opportunity to work from a small town, but what we see on the sales side, if you want to sell your firm, if you've got a remote team, and if you've got a fully remote office where your clients, that's a much more marketable practice right now than a traditional practice.
Yeah, it is, really is. One of my clients who's a CPA, When she started with me, we worked together for a year. I coached her. She was secretly actually looking for a job. She had 1.5, full-time employees, and wasn't loving her life. And within a year, she had bought two more firms. She had bought two firms, one that was completely virtual. The other one is in Wyoming, and needed to stay somewhat face-to-face because a lot of people in the town in Wyoming, they're ranchers. They don't have internet where they can, meet virtually and things like that. I believe she has 18 employees now, all remote, except for the one person that mans that office for them. And she now lives in Belize.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, that would not have been possible before. Would not have been possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you talked about tech guardrails. Can we talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, yes. So a lot of people will use the term work-life balance, and I don't really use that. I do for search terms, and because that's a very common phrase, but when people hear work-life balance, they feel like it should be 50-50, and it's not ever going to be. Some periods, some weeks, some months, some days, some minutes are going to be more than the other. Just like with accountants, you have tax accountants, you're very heavy January through April. But I like the term tech life balance because a lot of times that's what people are talking about. Is just all the things that are going in. But the guardrails, especially with technology, are so important because a guardrail isn't a barrier. People don't want to put up barriers to their clients or to their team. But when you think about guardrails keep us safe. When I'm driving around the Blue Ridge Parkway, I want guardrails there. And if we think about it, the guardrails keep us safe, keeps our focus safe, our attention, our health, but it also keeps our clients safe where we're not emailing them at 10 o'clock on a Friday night or asking them at the last minute to give us something when we should have done it 2 weeks ago. So I have something called a communication charter or a tech guardrails charter. And it's something that you can use with your team and, where you have everybody's name at the top and, what are their guardrails? Do they have their phone on do not disturb all day? I do. So everybody that works with me knows that, they can call and leave a message, but they're not going to get through to me. I have a different channel for that. And I do that to protect my attention for when I'm doing things like this podcast interview or when I'm with a coaching client. My accountant, I don't want his phone buzzing when he's doing my taxes, because every time we are distracted by a notification, we lose 70 seconds to 3 minutes of time. And when we're dealing with numbers and formulas, it can actually take us 15 to 25 minutes to get truly focused on a task. Well, that's y'all, right? And so coming up with these guardrails are important. Also, do your team members, do they prefer to be texted? Do they prefer to be emailed, Slacked, Teams, and deciding, this is as a group. It's not like if you have 20 people that everybody can choose their own, way that they like to be communicated with. But, for these types of messages, we use Teams. For these things, we use email. For this other type, we use our project management system. If it is urgent, you send a text to the personal phone, and having those guardrails. But then also, we don't send client emails, after 6 p.m. or we don't, send emails to each other on the weekends. My husband and I have phone-free Friday nights. At 6 p.m., our phones get shut off, and people know that. They know that if they call or text us, then we're not going to answer until Saturday. So that's one thing. But it's important for leaders to know that no matter how many times you say, if I contact you off hours, just ignore it. I don't expect you to respond. If you are in a position of hierarchy, most people will feel compelled to respond. And most people, if they know that you work off hours, will check their email. So instead, just schedule it to be delivered on Monday. If you have a thought, just schedule it to be sent at a different time. You can schedule Teams messages. You can schedule Slack messages. You can even schedule your text messages if you have an app downloaded called Scheduled. These are the types of things that are super important. And I just did a workshop at a local firm a couple weeks ago. And in the beginning, it was email, communication, power-ups. In the beginning, the CEO said he expected all of his staff to respond to client emails when they are sent. If a client emails at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, our clients are special, they're unique, we should get back to them. And, I sprinkled some magic fairy dust. And at the end, he actually said, I'm only going to process my email twice a day. And I told him, I said, what you said was very impactful, very impactful. And it doesn't just send a message to your team that they are not robots. It also sends a message to your clients, because for one thing, I don't want my CPA emailing me at night, because to me, that makes me worry about him. Like, why are you working at 10 o'clock at night? Then I wonder about like his efficiency. Are you not efficient? Are you overloaded that you have to work at 10 o'clock at night, that you're emailing me? And then also, this is often a big aha, for people. It makes people wonder and think about this. If I send an email to somebody and they respond immediately, sometimes I wonder, like, geez, do they not have enough work to do? Are they okay? Or, are they just sitting in their inbox, just waiting for emails? And so, while some people may think like, oh, I should get back to everybody right away. To me, it's very reactive and not responsive. And if you are the type of company, like I worked with a pest control company once, and they said, if we don't get back within 7 minutes, they've just called the next one in their Google search. Like if somebody's looking for a new, like a pest control place, they're just a lot of times going through the Google search. And he said, research shows we have 7 minutes, because they're just dialing numbers. But if they're already your client, then, you don't need to do that. And also, even if they are your prospect, if I were looking for a new CPA and they responded immediately, I would actually worry about their business.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's what scheduling applications are for. Like if somebody's finding you online, then there should be a way that they could, schedule an appointment, but then you've got filters set up so that
Yes.
your expectations are clearly. And I told my team this year, it's the year of the filter. Like we're going to filter everything.
Yes. And you can filter your email. We'll come first full circle. So one thing I really recommend is using Outlook or Gmail's filter and rule functions. And what you can do is, put in specific parameters that certain emails just bypass your inbox. You never see them. So like when people accept your meetings or when you get automatic notifications, I have a filter for my QuickBooks notifications. There's something that they send me I don't even know what, and I can't unsubscribe just from that. And so I just filter those messages out. But I get when somebody's paid me, I get that message because I want that message. Certain people will come in a different color. So, if your top client, if you make them green, then when all your other messages are blue, they'll come in green and they'll stand out to you.
Yeah, color is great.
Yeah, there's so many different ways. I'm actually, when we're done, going to go into our concierge's inbox and create some filters for her, because she said, I have so many, emails coming in. I need good filters for that. So that's one of my number one. Oh, industry news is a big one for accountants. So one thing I recommend is, you get so many updates all the time throughout the week. There's so much going on. To create a filter that all of those types of emails go to a folder or a label. Maybe you call it professional development, industry news, whatever you call it. And then scheduling time once a day or once a week, whatever works for your role, to go in there, and then you see them all at once. You can be more discerning, and you can just skim and see which ones you actually want to read, and all the rest you can just delete. And by creating that rule, then you're not getting those types of emails mixed in with your client emails. And they're kind of weeds within the flowers at that point. And so you can be very focused on your clients when you look at your inbox, but then, and then very focused on industry news at a certain time during the week. That's like one of my biggest tips for
How many folders do you think generally people are going to end up with if you were going to do different folders for different categories? Any sense of like what's a good range of, because if you get too many folders, then it's too much too.
Oh,
right?
yes. That would be called hyper organizing.
Yeah.
And CPAs tend to be, just because of the way their brains work, that makes them so smart. They tend to be hyper organizers. They're type A, type awesome. I am one of them, but I agree with client folders. Like that makes sense. But when people hyper organize, they're having to scroll up and down. They have parent folders and then, child folders and grandchild folders, and they're clicking. And so you want to be able to see all your folders at once and not have to scroll. Get more comfortable using the search function, because most people are just going to search. Archiving folders that you no longer use. And we have a program called the Email Action Plan. It's an 80-minute personalized email session, and then a month later we have a follow-up. And when I am looking at people's folders and kind of redoing folder structure, it's, do you know what's in that folder without clicking it open? And if people don't know the types of things that's in that folder, then that folder is not useful anymore. You're not going to file anything in there. Or I'll also see, especially with hyper organizers, they'll have two folders that something could fit into. And then they're like, I don't know which one. So the bigger the bucket, the easier it's for your brain, because you have less decisions to make, and just get comfortable using the search function.
Okay. Yeah. And Google, I don't know how many people use Google email, but God, the search you can find.
It's extraordinary.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I use the Google platform. It is better than Outlook's search by far, but Outlook has gotten much better.
Yeah.
Much better. Yeah.
Well, I'm a big believer in guardrails around your free time as well. Like I think we wrote a book called The Unplugged Vacation, and we live by it, and we want our team to live by it. And, that, to me, that's one of the biggest ways that you can prevent burnout, not only prevent burnout, but I think re-energize your brain when you come back. You come back with so much fresh energy. So I kind of like to steer a little bit toward health, because that's a big part of your messaging is managing productivity and health. You want to touch on that a little bit in terms of, goes really hand in hand with the tech guardrails, like what sort of other, what other guardrails?
Sure. First of all, I love that you have the unplugged vacation and you create those guardrails. I would also create guardrails around inactivity and movement. Accounting is a very sedentary position or field. And when you work remotely, especially, you do not move as much. Most people do not move as much, because my bathroom's right here. When I go to my co-working space, I have to walk across the building. And those steps add up. especially during tax season, the accountants that I've had that track their steps, they are appalled at how little movement they get throughout the day. And so I would create guardrails for breaks and recommend having breaks throughout the day, even if it is to step back and do 20 squats at your desk or to just walk around your block. It really does make a difference. Especially because, when you do physical activity, it does something to your brain. It changes things up a little bit. And you just need that. We're not robots. The other thing that a break can do is when we're staring at screens all day, we actually develop something called screen apnea. So many of us have heard of sleep apnea, where we, stop breathing in our sleep, but we also get screen apnea. When we are staring at closed screens, it's not so much like TV, it's more like our phones and our monitors. We hold our breath and we breathe very shallow up in our chest, which can create head and neck tension and shoulder tension. And if you start paying attention, you'll notice that you start to breathe differently. And I was giving this to actually the Michigan CPA Association. I was talking about this, and this woman raises her hand and she said, "Oh my God, I have it." She said, "I have screen apnea because all of my team will say they think that I'm mad all the time because she'll go, and she'll just sigh really hard. And she's like, what? And I said, "No, I'm not mad. I'm not mad." She said, "I don't even know that I'm doing it. But what I realize I'm doing now is I'm holding my breath basically for as long as I can. And then all of a sudden it comes out." And she said, "I have screen apnea." And that also affects our digestion, believe it or not, because when we don't take deep breaths, our diaphragm doesn't move properly. So it actually affects how we digest our food.
Interesting. Well, I guess that's why you're so wiped out.
Yes,
I've experienced it. If you're on Zoom literally all day long, which is, which a lot of people are on Zoom more.
Yeah,
you're more tired. I feel it.
Yes, there's a lot of reasons why we're more tired with Zoom. Just to give you a few reasons. So we tend to become like toy soldiers and not feel like we can move around as much. I know for me, I'm being very conscious not to hit my table because I'm normally a very animated person. It's so we feel like we can't move around. Whereas if we were in a conference room talking, I might lean back in my chair or something. The other thing is, a lot of times, if I'm looking at the camera, I can't see your face, but I want to be able to see your face. So I'm never looking at I'm not looking at the camera most of the time. And that's disconcerting because you're seeing me not look at the camera. If I look out here, you're wondering, what's she looking at? Did the Amazon truck just come?
Yeah.
Did her husband walk in? Did her cat just jump up on the desk? If we were in a conference room together, you would know that I'm looking outside. So then there's just what's going on? What's going on? There's so many little things that make video meetings more tiring for our brains. Also, all the virtual backgrounds. If we have 12 people on a screen and we all have different backgrounds, those actually can be tiring for us. That can be tiring.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I'm not saying don't do video meetings. I'm not saying that. But I will say, it's okay to just use the phone.
Yeah.
It is okay to just use the phone. And you use Calendly, correct? Because I remember signing up on your site. I use Acuity, yep, as my scheduling system. And not in all calls, like coaching calls, they have to be video, and discovery calls, I want those to be video. But a lot of other calls, I will give them the option, Zoom or phone. And I cannot tell you how many people have said, "Thank you for not making this a Zoom meeting." They were, I just had somebody the other day say, "This would have been my only Zoom meeting today, and I would have had to have gotten ready just for this 20-minute meeting. So thank you." for not, or people are just tired, or they want to move around their house or pace the floor or something.
Yeah. Or be able to take a call from their car or from a walk or,
yes, I'm a big fan of walking meetings. Yeah. And just going out. Yes, for sure.
So,
or to go out on your deck and like, just, if it's a nice day, it's, if it's 60 degrees in February in North Carolina, you want to sit on your deck and you're like, I can't believe I'm staring at this video camera for something that doesn't require my face.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up here quickly in just a moment. I've got a few questions I want to sort of rapidly go through.
Okay.
Team bonding. Tips for team bonding for a remote workforce. What are your thoughts?
For a remote workforce, there are a lot of creative companies out there now that have things like remote bingo, virtual scavenger hunts, things like that. Those can be some special things. But one thing that I think can make your remote staff feel very included is that, say you are a hybrid company, when you are having a meeting and you provide lunch or breakfast, send them a $20 Grubhub gift card for them to also have lunch on you, or something. Those types of things help people to feel included. I actually went to a conference once, and it was like 300-person conference, and everybody got a $25 Grubhub gift card to have lunch delivered, because it was a virtual conference and we would have all had lunch there. And so doing little things like that, I think can make a big difference to help people feel included.
Yeah. That reminds me of with food. We had a annual team meeting, and a lot of our team is in Canada, and we hired a virtual chef to do a cooking class, and they set it up where they sent the ingredients out to everyone, and then we got on in our kitchens and did a Zoom cooking, and it was a lot of fun.
That is an excellent idea. Please put that in your show notes, because I'm sure people will be curious about that. I had one client that theirs was not about work. Theirs was their work team, but it was like going to have fun work team. And they watched a drag show together. A virtual drag show together. They said it was so much fun, and it was just something really different and out of the ordinary. I love that idea. I have also seen where there's a company that sends out s'mores kits, and everybody gets like 4 or 5 marshmallows like shipped to their house in a Hershey bar, and a little candle and a skewer, and everybody can roast, the marshmallows and have s'mores together. And there are a lot of creative ideas, Yeah,
that's cool. Book. If you had to recommend one book to our audience, what would it be?
Well, I would like to say my own, but one of my favorite business books is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. That changed a dynamic between me and one of my team members, for sure. And to where we, practice blameless problem solving. And I love the book is it's military. It's Jocko Willink and somebody else, and I can't remember his name, which is unfortunate, but they talk about how like this situation would be in the military, and then this situation would be the same situation would be in business. But really it comes down to everybody owning what they do at your company. And I absolutely love that book.
Love it. All right. Now, what is your book? Because I have to ask.
It's called Work Well, Play More, Productive, Clutter-Free, Healthy Living, One Step at a Time. And what's different about it is that it is written over 12 months, and each month has a section on productivity, section on clutter, and a section on health. And within each of those, there's a novice, pro, and master level habit. So it really can kind of meet you wherever you are.
Love it. Those
You
little
can go through
habits,
that whole year.
those
What's
little
that?
habits I said those
Yep.
little habits add up.
They
add
do.
up.
They do.
So, all right, last question. If there's one bit of advice you want to give to our audience, what would it be?
Turn off your notifications. They are not on to make you more productive. They are there to give you a dopamine response to make you use the tool more. You've been conditioned to have them on, but that conditioning came from the psychology of the dopamine response, the chemical reaction of the dopamine response, and the psychology that, we need those, want those, that they're there to help us. And really, they're just there to distract us.
They're there to keep you on the screen, increase your screen time for that app. That's right.
Right.
Love that advice. That's awesome. Well, Marcey, this has been a very fun conversation, and I've come away with a lot. I know our audience has. And so thank you so much for joining us. How can people best find you online and connect with you?
Sure. Our company website is RaderCo.com. And I am also on LinkedIn. And so you can find and follow me on LinkedIn, but RaderCo.com is where we hang out the most.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast. If you like what you heard today, please follow us so that you can get updates when new episodes are released, and share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. You can also follow Poe Group Advisors on social media. Please visit our website for more information at PoeGroupAdvisors.com.